warm welcome to Disky Talk with Luyolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I do ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things Liverpool versus Manchester City as they take each other on in the Community Shield. So, what that means is that there's only a week left until league football resumes. But anyway, on today's episode, we discuss the Community Shield. So, you've got Liverpool, you've got Manchester City. Liverpool will be represented by the red team. Manchester City will be represented by the blue team. Naturally so, because Liverpool wear red, Manchester City wear blue, although that is a darker shade. But let's get into it. So, when you do have a look at Liverpool then, under JURGEN Klopp, they do line up in a 4-3-3. So, when you have a look at it then, in goals, you do have Alisson. And it is also key to note then that some players might not be available. So, this is then subject to availability, as I am recording this a week before. So, hopefully, these players that we do have a look at within this pre-match analysis will be available. This is then the predicted 11 and their strongest 11. So when you do have a look at it then, in goals you do have Alisson. So when you look at Alisson then, this is a goalkeeper then who has been very key for Liverpool over the years. And one of his main strengths then is 1v1 situations. This is a goalkeeper then who is very, very difficult to beat in those 1v1 situations. So moving on then right along, when you do have a look at the left back, you do have Andy Robertson. So when you look at Andy Robertson then, this is a fullback then who is key then with regards to occupying the left wide channel for Liverpool. So when you do have a look at him then, he is key then in ensuring that Liverpool are able to build up. So within those deep defensive pockets of space, he's also very good in 1v1 situations, as he's very, very solid. And whenever then he does have the ball deep within his own half, he is then well and able to make the right decisions. At times, he does even then play that diagonal pass to Trent Alexander-Arnold on the other side. And then when he does break into the opposition half, he becomes key then with regards to maintaining the width. And also then when he does arrive into that pocket of space, he is able then to deliver adequate crosses. And he does also take set pieces as well, as he does share those responsibilities with Trent Alexander-Arnold. So when you do look at Robertson, then this is a complete fullback, one of the best left backs within world football, a very, very key component of this Liverpool side and what he looks to offer them. So you do have Robertson then, who would start on the left-hand side. And then when you do then have a look at the left side at centre-back, you do have Virgil van Dijk. So when you have a look at Virgil van Dijk, this is then one of their leaders. This is then one of their key players and one of their best players as well. With Virgil van Dijk then, is very strong and he also reads the game very, very well. Also, he's so great in 1v1s that sometimes he doesn't even really engage the ball carrier. So sometimes what you'll see with Virgil van Dijk is just how he shapes his body, and his body orientation in 1v1 situations. It becomes so difficult for the dribbler or the ball carrier to go past him, and whenever then they do push the ball on the outside, he's able to match them for speed. So this is very, very quick centre-back as well. But when you do look at him then, and what makes him such a key component in possession with the ball and for this Liverpool side, is that diagonal ball that he would often play, and that diagonal ball is when he would be looking for Mo Salah within the right wide channel, or he'd be looking for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Very good communicator, very good organizer, and also a key component of enabling Liverpool to play that high line, because Liverpool do play with the high line. So whenever then you do play with the high line, you need centre-backs then who are able to read the game. You need centre-backs then who are very good at very good headers of the ball, and they are quite quick with regards to being able then to cover the distance in behind. So just look at this as a high line. Maybe that would be Virgil van Dijk, and the rest of Liverpool will be in opposition half. When you look at that space, there is a lot of space in behind. So what a lot of teams would do would be looking to play that ball in behind, but Virgil van Dijk is up to that task. So you do have Virgil van Dijk, who is quite a key player for Liverpool. And then moving on then right along, as the right-sided centre-back, here you do have multiple options. There is Matip, and then there is Konate as well. But I do foresee Ibrahim Konate becoming then the starting choice as the right-sided centre-back. So when you look at Konate then, this is a very strong centre-back, and a centre-back then who does act as an enabler, especially on the right-hand side when you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold with regards to the spatial occupation. So with Alexander-Arnold, he does then occupy pockets of space further up the pitch. He does then occupy very advanced pockets of space, so within the wide channel, within the half space. So he is then quite the creative hub for this Liverpool side. So it becomes key then that his centre-back, who plays on his side, then is well able to ensure that he can offer him that defensive cover. So Konate is then very, very good in those 1v1 situations. He's very strong, and in the opposition box, he is an aerial threat as well. So that is another thing then that Liverpool do have. As much as these two are very strong defensively, but they're also then an aerial threat within the opposition box. Moving on then right along, you do then have Trent Alexander-Arnold. So with Trent Alexander-Arnold, like I've just mentioned, he is the creative hub of this Liverpool side, as he is quite responsible then with regards to offering the width on the right hand side. But that would be in relation to where Henderson and Mohamed Salah would be. Sometimes it would be Naby Keita there. So he does then offer the width at times within the right wide channel. At times he does look to invert and offer you that half space occupation, where then he is looking then to become more of sort of a creative fullback, if you can call it. You know, he sort of takes up this role of a deep laying playmaker within this pocket of space. Is a player then who can go wide, is a player who can occupy further up the pitch as well. At times he does look to break into the box, deadly from direct free kicks as well. He also then does share the set piece responsibilities with Robertson, so he does have a very mean delivery on him as well. And then when you do move on right along, you do have Fabinho. Fabinho then is I think one of the most important players for this Liverpool side, especially considering then the defensive cover that he does offer you within the heart of midfield. His tactical awareness and his game intelligence is phenomenal. Then within the left side of space, you do have Thiago Alcantara, who then does act as a deep laying playmaker for this Liverpool side. So he's quite key then with regards to being able to circulate the ball, retain the ball, and at times he does find those penetrative passes within those tight pockets of space where then he is able then to break the lines. So with Thiago then, a lot of the times then, because Liverpool do face a lot of low blocks, he is able then a lot of the times to find that pass, and he's also got that diagonal pass as well, you know. But he does look to retain the ball, and he does look to ensure that Liverpool then are able then to keep the ball within the heart of midfield. They can circulate it, they can rotate it, and they can look to progress it as well. And then when you do move along as the right-sided midfielder within the heart of midfield, you do then have Jordan Henderson, but you also have Naby Keita, who can play in there as well. Off the left-hand side, you do then have Diaz, who then offers them a lot of speed and a lot of skill coming off the left-hand side, and also then half-space occupation with regards to how he'd look to cut in, because he does like to drift infield a lot of the times. And then when you do have a look at the right-hand side, you do have Mohamed Salah, who has just signed a new long-term deal. With Mohamed Salah then, he does often start wide, but a lot of the times does occupy that inside forward role, where then he is looking to break into the box and penetrate into the final third, as we do know that he is such a goal threat for this Liverpool side, and has been their top goal scorer for the many years that have passed ever since he has worn a Liverpool t-shirt. So when you then move on then right along, up front, this is where the big question is, because we do know that they have brought in Darwin Núñez, from Benfica. And when you do have a look at Darwin Núñez, then he isn't in the fold of Firmino. So he's not a false nine. He is an out-and-out number 9. So when you do look at him, then he does sort of change the complexion of how Liverpool play. Because over the years, Liverpool have played with the false 9. So you would have Jota there, you'd have Firmino, you also had Mohamed Salah, and you also had Sadio Mane, who just left. So with Núñez, he will be looking to occupy the 2 centre-halves a lot more and keep the shape and be looking then to pin them, And that is what then Darwin Núñez would offer you, and scores a lot of goals as well. However, there are quite a few red flags, if I could call it, because with Darwin Núñez, he's only had one standout season, which was the past season for Benfica, but in other seasons, he hasn't really been scoring a lot of goals. And in the past season, he also then outperformed his expected goals ratio, so his expected goals in the past season was sitting at about 15, if I'm not mistaken, but he went on to score about 24, 26, stand to be corrected on that one. So this is a player then who is pretty much a gamble, especially when you look at the price tag as well. And technically, he's also very limited, but physically very strong, he's very quick, and he can score goals as well. But you also do have Firmino, and then you have Jota as well, who can look to start. So that is the standard formation of Liverpool in the 4-3-3. What do they look like then with regards to the offensive scheme in the opposition half? So when they do go into the opposition half, you do have Robertson, who would be key then with regards to offering the width on the left-hand side. Diaz would be a lot more tucked in. You'd find him occupying the half space there. You do then have Mohamed Salah then, who would be there as an inside forward. And then, this is what's special then on the right-hand side, because with Liverpool, they do have a lot of wide overloads, and they do have a lot of wide rotations and triangulations as well. So it is a main feature, a lot more on the right-hand side of Liverpool's team. So when you look at it then, naturally you would be thinking that Alexander-Arnold will go in there, but all the times he goes in there, and then you'd have Henderson sometimes going there, sometimes you'd have Henderson there, you'd have Mohamed Salah there. So on the right-hand side, it does change a lot of the times, and they do look to overload, and they've got this lovely positional and wide rotations on the right-hand side. And then, moving on there right along, you would then have Thiago, who would occupy mainly the left side of the half space. And then you would have Virgil van Dijk there. You would have Konato Matip there. And then you would have Fabinho there. So we are looking at somewhat of a 2-3-5. That's what the offensive scheme within the opposition half becomes like. So I did mention that they do play with quite a high line. So then it does become key then that you've got 2 centre-backs who are quick, who are able to read the game very well, and who are also very, very good headers of the ball. So that is what Liverpool look like. And at times, let's have a look at it then with regards to what do they look like out of possession and how then they're looking to press. So with Liverpool then, a lot of the times they do press with a very narrow 4-3-3 block. So when they do look to press, because they do press high, so that is what they look to press like. When you have a look at this Liverpool side, they press very narrow at times in relation to how the opposition is trying to build up, and when they are trying to actually stop the both centre-backs with regards to having that freedom of being able to build up. What they will do is you will have Jordan Henderson breaking, and then it becomes a very narrow 4-4-2 block. Then you would see somewhat of that shape when they're trying then to ensure that the centre-backs aren't able to build up smoothly, and then the cover shadow becomes very key. So the cover shadow then becomes key with regards to then blocking those passing channels and passing lanes into the midfield, where then the opposition is looking to build up. So that is what they look like then. At times then it also does somewhat look like a 4-5-1, because what some teams will do then is that they'll push their fullbacks very high. That forces Mohamed Salah and Diaz to sort of look to track them. Then it becomes a 4-5-1. So that is Liverpool. So we've had a look at it then from their standard formation. Tactically, what are they looking to do? Some of the key players, their attributes, and also then we've had a look at their defensive and their offensive schemes and how they look to press as well. So let's move on then to Manchester City. So when you do have a look at Manchester City, you have a look at Pep Guardiola's side. This is a side then that is built heavily on fluidity, dynamic play, positional play, rotations, and overloads as well, be it centrally and sometimes in the wide areas as well. With them, very similar then to Liverpool, they line up in a 4-3-3 as well. So when you do have a look at this Manchester City side, you do have Edison in goals, and then as the right-sided centre-back, you will have Ruben Dias. So when you look at Edison, then this is has been their mainstay and has been quite a key component of this Manchester City side, especially in build-up play. I think in world football, he's the best build-up play goalkeeper with regards to understanding the texture and the dynamic of being able then to build up. So with him, then he does understand which type of passes to play, when to play them. He does know when to bypass the first line. He does know when to look for the wide men. He does know when to play that long ball, because that's also a speciality that he has, So that is Edison within goals for this Manchester City side. And then when you have a look at it, you do have Ruben Dias, who is their captain as well. Very strong, no-nonsense type defender. He is an aerial threat within the opposition box as well. And then as the left-sided centre-back, the last fixture then, or the last friendly rather, that they did play was against Bayern Munich, and Laporte wasn't available, so Nathan Ake started there. So I do think that Nathan Ake could start as the left-sided centre-back, but you also do have Laporte there. Very key then with regards to looking to build up, because then it does give you that natural option and that natural angle within this left-sided half space whenever then he is looking to build up. And the thing then with Manchester City is that sometimes they do facilitate sort of a three-man build-up where Kyle Walker would be looking to invert, Diaz would be there, and then you'd have Ake, who would be key then within this left-wide channel with regards to progressing the ball for this Manchester City side. And then when you move on right along then, as the right back, you do have Kyle Walker. This is then a fullback then who is a lot more defensive. He offers you that defensive solidity. He gives you the option then of being able then to build up with a three. A lot of the times he does look to invert and become the third centre-back for this Manchester City side. Also offers them that cover, because Manchester City, because they keep the ball and they dominate possession against most teams, if not every team they play against, they do find themselves further up the pitch. So it becomes key then that on the cover you've got a player who's very quick and can offer that defensive cover with speed for his centre-backs. And then on the left-hand side, you do have João Cancelo. With João Cancelo, pretty much like Alexander-Arnold with regards to his spatial occupation. He does occupy the left-sided half space. Sometimes he can also go wide. He does also penetrate and break into the final third. A player then who's very creative and has come up with goals as well. So when you do look at him then, very creative. He does play those crosses, and what's special about him then is that he offers you various angles of passing, and I mean that because then this isn't a technically limited player. So as much as then he is right-footed and he does invert, he does have this angle of pass. So sometimes then if you have your striker there, and he's in that position, you do need this angle of pass. But a right-footed player wouldn't always be able to give you that angle of pass if he's playing it with the right foot. Instead, the angle would normally go the other way, or it would go straight. Sometimes you need it sort of bending around the defense. What he does very well then is that he's able to play that pass with the outside of his foot. So it still gives you the same shape and the same angle as if it was being played with the left foot. So that is what he has, and very, very special player. And then when you move on then, right along, within the art of midfield, you do have Rodri, who I think then was the best defensive midfielder, if not one of the best in world football last season. And then when you move on along, you do have Kevin De Bruyne, who does occupy the right side of half space. And then you do have Bernardo Silva, who occupies the left side of half space. So with Kevin De Bruyne, then I think within world football is the best midfielder and the best transitional midfielder. So what do I mean by that? So he's very good then at offensive transitions and being able to ensure that he sets up counter-attacking opportunities for this Manchester City side, either by carrying the ball, but mostly by those penetrative passes, and his passing range is quite phenomenal, because then he can play then those 40-yard passes, he can play those short passes, and what he does very well is that when he does pop up into this right-sided half space, he's often got this signature cross of ease that is able then to bend around the whole of the defense. So he'd play it then into sort of the corridor of uncertainty. That ball goes into the corridor of uncertainty, and it can go to the back post as well. So that is Kevin De Bruyne then, who is their playmaker. He is their talisman. With Bernardo Silva then, he does play as the other number 8 within the heart of midfield. What I like then about Bernardo Silva then is his versatility and what he offers this Manchester City side. By virtue of the fact that then I think then he's such a complete footballer for this Manchester City side. Defensively, offensively, he's great. So with and without the ball, he offers this Manchester City side a lot. So moving on then right along. As the right winger, you will most likely have Riyad Mahrez starting off the right-hand side. When you have a look at him then, he is very creative, he's skillful, and he scores a lot of goals for this Manchester City side. Off the left-hand side, you do then have Foden, or you could potentially have Grealish. The difference is then is that with Foden, he would be more adept with regards to keeping the width, as João Cancelo would look to invert, because then with Foden, he is naturally left-footed. With Foden then, he is very skillful, he's very creative, and a player then who does often have these mazy runs, and he's got an eye for goal as well. With Grealish, the difference is Grealish tends to drift in a lot more because he is right-footed, so he'd play more as an inverted winger, and he'd be looking to drift in a lot of the times, and he'd be looking to cut in a lot of the times. That's what Grealish does. He is very good then at carrying the ball, sometimes to his detriment because sometimes he over-carries. So if you can just get that right, and sometimes his decision making within the final third, he could be a very deadly player for this Manchester City side, because towards the end of the season, last season, he started to show glimpses of that. So you could have Foden, or you could have Grealish coming off the left-hand side. And then up front, the big man, Erling Haaland, who has signed for Manchester City. He did score on debut against Bayern Munich. Took him 12 minutes, where then he was able to tap in within the 6-yard box. So you do have Erling Haaland. But what does Erling Haaland offer you? So Manchester City over the years, like Liverpool, have been playing with the false 9. So with Erling Haaland then, what he offers you then is a number 9 who is able then to occupy the 2 centre-backs. Offers you then a number 9 who knows his way in and around the box, but mainly in the box. So how he moves, I think that is one of his special traits, and where it becomes very difficult to pick him up, because his movement in behind, his movement when it comes to coming a bit short, his movement then with regards to making those penetrative runs is absolutely phenomenal. Also then within the box, at times he doesn't look to attack the front post or the back post. Sometimes he'll just hold his run, get the ball, and he's able to finish. So when you look at Haaland, Manchester City are a team then that within world football, as much as you might not believe it, but they rank high up for crosses. So they play a lot of crosses. And over the years, because they've had Foden playing as a false 9, sometimes they have a De Bruyne, or sometimes they have Sterling, they don't really have the capacity and the knack to be able to attack the ball at the right time within the 6-yard box or within the box itself. But when you have Erling Haaland, who specializes in that, this is where then the money is for Manchester City. This is why they've paid the money that they've paid for him. And this is why I think Erling Haaland then can go on to become quite the phenomenal asset for Manchester City. However, the downside then with him is that he is injury prone. So that is something that Manchester City have to get right. And that is something then that one would hope that he's able to stay fit. And if he stays fit for prolonged periods, he will be able to become a phenomenal asset for this Manchester City side. So with him then, could look to start up front in this game. However, when you look at Manchester City then, let's have a look at their offensive scheme. So when you do have a look at them, synonymous to Liverpool, they also then create a front 5 with their offensive scheme when they become aggressive. But the difference is with them, the wide channels are occupied by their wingers. So you'd have Mahrez there, and then you'd have Foden, or you'd have Grealish there, and then you'd have Bernardo Silva, you'd have Kevin De Bruyne, you'd then have Bernardo Silva there, and then you'd have Rodri there, and then there you'd have Diaz, you'd have Ake, or you'd have Laporte, and then you'd have João Cancelo would look to invert, and then you would have Kyle Walker, who becomes sort of the third centre-back. So as opposed to Liverpool's 2-3-5, Here you've got a 3-2-5 because with Kyle Walker, he does tend to invert. Sometimes he does sort of creep up into that area, so it can look somewhat of a 2-3-5, but mainly then a 3-2-5 offensive scheme when you look at it. And with Manchester City then, they are a team then that obviously does look to also press high up. But how do they do that? So with Manchester City then, they often press in a 4-4-2. So how they do that then is that you have Kyle Walker there, you have Diaz, you have Nathan Ake, you have Cancelo, you'd have Rodri, and then you'd have Bernardo Silva. So you'll have Erling Haaland, you have De Bruyne joining, you'd have Mahrez there, and it's often a narrow 4-4-2, and then you'd have either Foden or Grealish there. So they would press within a very narrow 4-4-2. That is what they would look to press like, especially then if they're looking then to ensure that the two centre-backs can't build up. So that's what they'll be looking to do against Liverpool, because Liverpool are a team that look to build up from the back. Sometimes they can use sort of this way of pressing. So what they do is they'll have one in Haaland who will go and look to press. De Bruyne will maintain his position there. As soon as the ball travels across, then you have De Bruyne. Haaland would drop. It's obviously in relation to how the opposition is looking to build up. That's how they'd look to build up. And then to cut out this, it's either they use a cover shadow, so it'll be De Bruyne. You'd obviously have to position himself adequately to ensure that he cuts out that passing option. And they'd also push Bernardo Silva as close as possible. So then it sort of becomes a 3 versus 3 in there. So you'd have 1-2-3 versus 1-2-3 in there, where then they can't look to build up. So it would be very narrow like that. But let's have a look then at a player who I think is very key then for this Manchester City side, Bernardo Silva. So with Bernardo Silva then, a lot of the times, Rodri, because he plays as the deepest laying midfielder for this Manchester City side, and as a defensive midfielder, he often needs a partner. So the partner then between De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva would be Bernardo Silva, who drop in and form that double pivot alongside him. So for prolonged periods, he could look to play there alongside him, and he could look then to also offer that whenever then Manchester City are looking to build up. If then the team, the opposition, Liverpool, they will be looking then to stop Rodri from getting the ball so that they don't have that seamless build-up. So then Bernardo Silva would add an extra man within build-up to ensure that they are able to build up smoothly and seamlessly as well. So that is Manchester City then with regards to how they'd be looking to go about things. The key players then for Manchester City coming up into this one, it is Kevin De Bruyne and it is Erling Haaland as well. For Liverpool then, the key players then is Mohamed Salah, and I would also say then that the key player then would be Thiago within that heart of midfield, and Fabinho as well, with regards to how they look to marshal and how then they look to maintain Manchester City, especially then when they institute those central overloads within those two off spaces and within the central channel as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, how I think this game plays out. So I do think that this will be a tightly contested match, as it always has been between Liverpool and Manchester City, as there's always been so many goals between these two over the recent seasons. And I also think that this is the best game in world football. Liverpool versus Manchester City, Pep Guardiola versus Jurgen Klopp. However, I do have to give you a prediction on who I think will win the Community Shield. So I think Manchester City will win the Community Shield by 2-1. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Disky Talk with Leolo. Signing out.